The smell of apple biscuits still lingered when my daughter-in-law called my cooking peasant food. Still, I didn't say a word, just folded my apron and laid it on the counter like a flag at rest. As the cinnamon warmth curled in the air, her laughter felt colder than the butter left untouched. While she posed for her followers, I traced my name on the cast-iron handle she dismissed, the same pan that paid for the marble she now thinks she owns. That's when I decided, if she won't taste respect, she'll read it in the deed. All right, before we dive into this crazy story, do me a favor. Subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. The morning light poured through the wide kitchen windows, spilling gold over the long oak table that Martha Quinn had scrubbed herself before dawn. The scent of butter, roasted potatoes, and apple biscuits drifted through the air, the kind of smell that made a house feel like it had a heartbeat. She'd been up since 5, hands steady as she diced onions and whisked eggs, the radio humming some old country tune in the background. Now, the table gleamed with her work. A skillet hash topped with sunny-side eggs, a platter of hand-cut biscuits, a bowl of whipped honey butter, and mugs of fresh-pressed cider. It was the kind of breakfast Martha once made for her catering clients before she retired, back when flavor mattered more than hashtags. "Smells incredible," Jake said, sliding into his seat. He was still half-dressed from his morning jog, face flushed, eyes darting between his mother and his wife. Haley floated in moments later, phone in hand, ring light already clipped to her blouse. Her voice rose high and cheerful for the camera. "Brunch with the fam. Wait till you see what we're working with today." Martha watched her daughter-in-law's lens glide past the food without lingering. The phone camera caught only the table, never the person who had cooked it. Haley set the phone down and picked up a biscuit. It broke apart perfectly, steam curling upward, the scent of apples and cinnamon warm enough to make Elle giggle. Haley's smile faltered for half a second before she said it, the words sharp as vinegar. "This is like peasant food." A beat. No offense. The laughter that followed was thin and uncertain. Even the ceiling fan seemed to pause. Martha didn't move. She stood at the head of the table, her hands folded around a dish towel, her expression unreadable. Her son stared at his plate. Tapping his fork against the edge, Ella leaned toward her grandma, voice small but certain. "Grandma's food is my favorite." Haley gave a light, dismissive chuckle. "That's cute, sweetie, but wait till you try my fig balsamic cloud bites for the conference next week. Totally next level. Michelin meets minimalist." She said it like a sermon, eyes flashing toward Jake as though she expected applause. Martha set the towel on the counter. "Cloud bites," she repeated softly. "That sounds airy." Haley laughed again, not catching the undertone. "It's about presentation, Martha. We live in a visual world now. People don't want to eat heavy. They want to see beauty." Martha didn't argue. She'd been in kitchens her whole life. Kitchens with sweat and flour and the noise of real hunger. The kind where beauty was in the way a knife cut clean or a sauce thickened slow. The skillet on the table still sizzled faintly, the last bit of heat whispering from cast iron. Martha reached to adjust the handle, her fingers brushing against the seasoned metal. Haley's manicured hand stopped her. "Careful," Haley said with a bright smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You'll scratch the table. This isn't a diner." That did it. Jake cleared his throat, ready to step in, but Martha simply exhaled, one long, calm breath that seemed to settle the entire room. "I see," she said quietly. "Well, I suppose every kitchen finds its own kind of beauty." She wiped her hands on her apron, slow and deliberate, and unknotted the strings behind her waist. The room fell still. Even Haley looked uncertain now. Martha folded the apron once, then again, as if tucking away something sacred. She laid it across the counter beside her spice rack, the old one with faded labels and handwritten jars. Ella's small voice broke the silence. "Grandma, aren't you gonna eat?" Martha smiled, soft, warm, but distant. "Not right now, honey." Haley tried to laugh again, but it came out thin. "Don't be dramatic, Martha, it's just brunch." Martha didn't answer. She took one last look at her biscuits cooling in the basket, the butter melting into gold streaks, and turned toward the door. The sound of her footsteps echoed down the hallway, slow and steady, like someone walking away from a place they'd built with their bare hands. Haley reached for her phone again, trying to salvage her tone, her brand, her image. "Anyway," she said to the camera, forcing brightness, "next week, I'll show you a real kitchen makeover." The screen light reflected in her eyes, but the room behind her suddenly looked colder, quieter, as though something important had just been shut off. Out on the patio, Martha stood alone under the morning sun, the smell of apple and iron still clinging to her hands. She didn't say a word, but in her silence the decision had already been made. The next morning, the kitchen didn't smell like anything. No butter, no coffee, no trace of what made it feel alive. Just the sterile echo of quartz counters and the faint hum of Haley's diffuser hissing out artificial linen breeze. Martha stood at the doorway, mug in hand, watching her daughter-in-law rearrange the her spice rack, into neat, color-coded jars that still smelled like cumin and paprika. The same rack Martha had carried through every kitchen she'd ever worked in. "Morning," Martha said. Haley turned, still in her silk robe. "Hey, Martha." "So, I was thinking." Her voice had that brittle sweetness that came before bad news. "Since the conference is next week, I'm rebranding the whole kitchen vibe." Martha raised an eyebrow. "Rebranding?" Haley smiled, sweeping her arm across the room as though unveiling art. "Brighter, cleaner, less clutter, more modern energy. No offense, but these old pans and jars just don't fit the look I'm going for." Martha took a slow sip of her coffee. "The look?" "Exactly," Haley said brightly. "See, my followers love minimalist content. Clean lines, neutral tones. So," she reached toward the hanging cast iron skillet, "I think we'll start with this. It's too heavy?" Her nails clicked against the handle. "Careful," Martha said softly. "That pan's older than you." Haley laughed. "All the more reason to retire it, right?" "Don't worry, I'll keep it in storage somewhere safe. I just need the space clear for filming." Jake walked in mid-sentence, hair damp from a shower, sensing the tension like a dog in a thunderstorm. "What's going on?" "Nothing," Haley said quickly. "Just a kitchen update. We're going for a fresh start." Martha set her mug down. Fresh start. Her voice was calm, almost flat. "That's one way to put it." Haley smiled at her husband. "Don't look so worried, babe. Your mom deserves to relax anyway. No more stress over cooking." Jake rubbed the back of his neck. "You don't have to." He glanced at Martha, then back at Haley. "Mom, you don't have to leave the kitchen. Just maybe give her some space for her thing." Martha's lips twitched, not quite a smile. "Space is free," she said. "Respect is least." Haley blinked, missing the sting. "Right, that's a great attitude." Martha turned toward the pantry, pulled open the door, and began gathering her things without another word. She started with her cast iron, the one polished black from decades of care. Then the small spice jars with fading labels: marjoram, smoked salt, juniper. Her recipe box came next, its cards curled at the edges, stained with oil and thyme. Haley hovered. "Oh, you don't have to take all that. I can keep it." Martha didn't answer. She moved methodically, stacking everything into an old catering crate from her restaurant days. Each clang of metal against wood landed like punctuation. Jake tried again. Mom. She didn't look up. It's fine, Jake. I've cooked in worse places. Where are you even going to set all that up? He asked gently. The garage, she said. Plenty of space out there. Haley laughed, short and incredulous. You're not seriously? But Martha had already lifted the crate and started walking. Outside, the desert heat shimmered over the driveway. The garage door groaned open, revealing the storage space she'd helped clean out last spring. It smelled like cardboard, dust, and motor oil. Not a kitchen, but it would do. She set her crate down, brushed off a workbench, and ran her fingers over the wood grain. A different kind of counter. A blank slate. Inside, through the glass, she could see Haley posing at the stove, camera light bouncing off her white cabinets. Jake stood behind her, uncertain, hands shoved deep in his pockets. Elle sat at the table coloring, her crayons forgotten as she watched her grandmother through the window. Martha gave the little girl a wink. Small, secret, unbroken. Then a car engine rumbled up the driveway. A dusty silver sedan, familiar in sound before sight. The door opened, and out stepped Pat Reyes, a tall woman in denim and sun-tanned calm, carrying a folder under one arm. She leaned against the doorframe of the garage, eyes flicking to the crate of cookware, then to Martha. So, Pat said, voice low and knowing. You ready to do this? Martha looked back toward the house where Haley's laughter echoed faintly through the glass, brittle and staged. Her hand rested on the handle of her cast-iron skillet. She didn't smile, but her answer came steady. More than ready. The hum of the ceiling fan filled the quiet of the garage that evening. Papers were spread across Martha's workbench like the aftermath of a storm. Deeds, incorporation forms, tax filings, all marked with her tidy handwriting from years ago. A mason jar candle flickered beside them, its flame catching the dust that floated in the air. Pat sat opposite her, glasses perched on the end of her nose, flipping through a thick manila folder. You kept every document, she said, sounding both impressed and unsurprised. You always did play the long game? Martha gave a small shrug. You don't run a restaurant for 30 years without keeping your paperwork in order. Still, Pat murmured, tapping a finger on one page. This here, the kitchen expansion, the one you paid for after Jake and Haley bought the place? You used the old LLC from the catering business to manage the funds. I did, Martha said, eyes steady. Easier for the deductions. Pat smiled, a slow cat-like grin. Then technically, she slid the document across the table. The kitchen still falls under the LLC's ownership, not the personal property of Jake and Haley. And since the LLC is you, well, sweetheart, you built the kitchen. You own the kitchen. For a moment, neither woman spoke. The garage door rattled slightly in the desert wind. Martha looked down at the signature line, her name, bold and unshakable, written 10 years ago. Back when she thought the kitchen would be a legacy for family dinners, not live streams. She never read this, Martha said quietly. Haley just assumed everything here was theirs. Assumed wrong? Pat replied. Jake's name is on the deed, sure. But this section, she tapped again, lists the improvements and fixtures under the LLC leasehold, the counters, the appliances, the entire culinary build-out. Martha's fingers traced the edge of the page, the paper soft and worn from time. I remember fighting the contractor over that marble island. Cost more than my first car. Pat chuckled. And now it's your leverage. Outside, a coyote howled, distant but sharp. The sound hung in the silence that followed like punctuation. Jake appeared in the doorway then, hands in his pockets, eyes flicking between the two women. Mom, Pat. What's going on here? Pat leaned back, unbothered. Just a little business housekeeping. Jake stepped closer, frowning. What kind of business? Martha turned the paper toward him. You remember when I helped you and Haley buy the house? He nodded slowly. Of course. I didn't just write a check, she said. I structured it under my old company. The LLC owns part of the property, mostly the kitchen addition. Jake's brows knitted. Okay, but why dig into that now? Martha didn't answer immediately. She looked at him the way only a mother could. Soft, patient, but cutting through every layer of avoidance he tried to hide behind. Because respect isn't a gift, Jake. It's a lease. And right now, someone's overdue. He sighed, rubbing his jaw. Mom, I know Haley said some things. She said enough, Martha interrupted. She made it clear she thinks my kitchen is her stage, so I'm going to remind her who built it. Pat slid another paper across the bench. This is the LLC's operating agreement. You can amend it. Add an access clause. Specify that only authorized members can use the kitchen under the company's lease terms. Jake looked between them, disbelief flickering across his face. You're talking about locking her out of her own kitchen. Not hers, Pat said evenly. Yours, maybe. But legally? She pointed at the folder. It's Martha's. Martha reached for a pen, twirling it once between her fingers. You asked me once why I never argued with her, she said. This is why. I don't raise my voice. I raise paperwork. Jake gave a weak laugh, one that didn't hide his unease. Is this really necessary? Martha met his eyes, the same gray-green eyes he'd inherited from her. No, Jake, she said softly. It's overdue. The pen touched the paper. The sound of her signature, the faint scratch of ink, was louder than any slam of a door. Pat gathered the signed documents into her folder, her expression unreadable but satisfied. I'll file the amendment first thing in the morning. She won't see it coming. Martha nodded once, sliding her glasses off. Good. Let's make sure she reads the next letter carefully. Jake stared at the papers, then at his mother, torn between loyalty and dread. Mom, what are you planning? Martha reached for her cast-iron skillet on the bench, running her thumb across the worn handle. The candlelight glinted off the black metal like armor. Nothing loud, she said, just something she can't edit. Haley loved Mondays because the light was perfect. It hit the marble island at an angle that made everything gleam, the kind of natural sheen her followers swore was a filter. She'd been live for 10 minutes already, bouncing between her sous vide starter kit sponsorship and a half-finished batch of almond croissants. Okay, babes, she said into the camera, voice coated in confidence. Today, we're getting rustic. But, elevated rustic. Not like old-school casserole rustic. She winked. We're talking Napa farmhouse chic. In the corner of the counter sat an unopened envelope, ivory paper with her name scrawled in neat handwriting. It had been slipped under the front door earlier that morning, but she hadn't had time to look. Not when she was about to post a collab reel with a cookware brand. Comments fluttered up the screen. Your kitchen's goals. That backsplash. Do you design all your own sets? Haley grinned. It's not a set, she said proudly, turning in a slow circle. This is my real kitchen, built from scratch. Every tile, every... She stopped mid-sentence, noticing the envelope again. Something about the familiar script on the front tugged at her attention. The chat began spamming emojis. Open it, one comment read. Maybe it's fan mail? Another said. Haley laughed lightly. Oh, you guys are too much. She peeled the seal open, still smiling for the audience. Inside was a single printed page. Her eyes skimmed the first line, and her mouth went dry. Effective immediately, your use of the kitchen located at 1120 Red Willow Drive is suspended pending compliance with the lease agreement of Quinn Heritage Kitchens, LLC. Her laughter wavered. What? She read it again, Slower this time, the words heavy as stone. The chat exploded. Wait, what lease? Is that real? Is this a skit? She forced a laugh. It's it's just a prank. My mother-in-law's sense of humor, you know? Her hands trembled slightly as she held up the page to the camera. The logo at the top was unmistakable. Quinn Heritage Kitchens, LLC, embossed in silver. And at the bottom, a neat signature. Martha E. Quinn, managing member. Behind the camera, Jake's voice cut through. Haley, what is that? She turned, startled. He'd been standing in the doorway, arms crossed, a towel slung over his shoulder. It's nothing. A joke. Look. She thrust the letter toward him. He took it and read in silence. His color drained as he reached the final paragraph. Haley, this says you're prohibited from using the kitchen until lease compliance is verified. Her smile cracked. Lease compliance? It's our house. Jake didn't answer right away. He reread the document, scanning for a loophole that wasn't there. This isn't a joke, he said finally. His voice was flat, almost stunned. The live stream chat flooded faster. OMG, this is awkward. Her ML is savage. I'm screenshotting this. Haley tried to laugh it off again, but her throat had gone dry. Guys, chill. My followers love when we do these little pranks. Then came a knock at the door. Sharp, deliberate. Pat Reyes stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. She carried her folder under one arm, her sunglasses still on despite the indoor light. Haley blinked. What are you doing here? Delivering confirmation, Pat said, her tone businesslike. She handed Jake a second envelope. Filed and recorded as of this morning, the clause is active. Jake opened it, scanning the notarized forms. The HOA watermark gleamed faintly under the overhead lights. Pat, this is real? Pat's lips curved in something between satisfaction and warning. It's legal and airtight. Haley's hands flew to her chest. You can't be serious. This is harassment. She can't own my kitchen. Pat took off her sunglasses. She doesn't own your kitchen, she said calmly. She owns the kitchen. There's a difference. Haley's phone was still streaming, its lens catching everything, her outrage, Jake's silence, Pat's composure. The comments scrolled faster than she could read. This is the wildest live ever. Grandma lawyered up. Girl, end the stream. Jake finally reached over and hit end. The phone went dark, leaving only the hum of the refrigerator and the sound of Haley's shallow breathing. She turned on him, voice breaking. You're not seriously okay with this. He didn't meet her eyes. I told you to give her space. Pat gathered her folders, her gaze sliding toward the hallway window where the faint outline of Martha's casita could be seen through the desert haze. You should have read what you signed, she said simply. Haley stood frozen, the letter trembling in her hand. The ink blurred as her tears hit the page. Outside, across the patio, Martha watered her herbs in the morning light. Calm, silent, as if she hadn't just turned a camera queen's kingdom into a locked set. Inside, Haley whispered to herself, as if saying it could make it true. It's just a prank. But her own words sounded hollow in the empty kitchen. By Wednesday, the kitchen was sealed. The new keypad lock gleamed against the French doors, sleek and silver, the kind you'd see in an upscale tasting room, not a family home. A laminated HOA notice hung beneath it, signed in crisp black ink. Access restricted. Authorized users only. Quinn Heritage Kitchens, LLC. Haley stood in front of it barefoot, her phone pressed to her chest, the Arizona heat ghosting in through the open windows. Her reflection in the glossy lock looked distorted, warped by the curve of the metal. This is insane, she muttered. She punched a random code. Nothing. Tried again. The lock beeped once, cold and indifferent. Ella peeked around the corner, clutching her stuffed llama. Grandma said not to touch it, she whispered. Haley spun on her. Grandma doesn't decide who gets to use my kitchen. Ella hugged the llama tighter. It's not yours, she said simply. Haley's breath caught. Excuse me? Before she could say more, the garage door opened across the driveway. Martha's laughter floated out, low and effortless, the sound of someone who'd already won without needing to gloat. Haley stormed outside. The desert sun hit her like punishment. Martha stood by her herb planters, clipping basil, wearing her wide-brimmed hat and a calm smile that only infuriated Haley more. "Did you do this?" Haley demanded, pointing back toward the house. "That keypad, that ridiculous sign, did you seriously get the HOA involved?" Martha didn't look up. Pat handled the paperwork. She snipped another stem of basil. Dana approved it. Dana? Haley nearly laughed. You mean the HOA president who's obsessed with potlucks? You got her to sign off on this circus? As if on cue, Dana Holt herself appeared at the end of the path, clipboard in hand, her linen dress fluttering in the hot wind. She looked like she'd been waiting for this moment. Haley, Dana said cheerfully. I was just about to text you. Don't, Haley snapped. You've already overstepped. What's next? You padlock my fridge? Dana raised an eyebrow. The kitchen was never deeded under your name. The LLC owns it. The lock is compliance protocol. Haley laughed, the sound brittle. Compliance? This is abuse, Dana. You're enabling a 70-year-old woman to harass me in my own home. Dana didn't flinch. You might want to double-check your own filings before throwing that word around. I'm calling my lawyer, Haley said. Do, Dana replied, turning to go. Just make sure he reads the right clause this time. The gate clicked behind her, leaving Haley trembling in the heat, the sound of cicadas swelling around her. That night, the house felt smaller, quieter in the wrong way. The kitchen sat dark beyond its locked doors, and every time Haley walked past, the keypad's faint red glow seemed to mock her. She'd called Jake's phone twice already, but he was working late again, conveniently missing the fallout. So she went live. The camera light flared and her face appeared, polished but tired, the kind of tired that filters couldn't hide. Behind her, the washer and dryer hummed. Hey, loves, she began, forcing a grin. Little change of scenery tonight. The kitchen's under, minor renovation, so we're improvising. She poured a handful of cereal into a mixing bowl, the clang echoing off the laundry room walls. Rustic breakfasts, right? The comments came fast. Wait, why are you filming in a laundry room? Where's your kitchen? That Marble Island's gone? Is this another prank? Haley's jaw tightened. No prank, she said through a smile. Just working with what I've got. A few mocking emojis scrolled past. Chef hats, crying faces, even one with a padlock. The tone had changed. Her followers weren't amused. They were entertained. Someone wrote, So Grandma kicked you out for real? Another, She owns your kitchen. LOL legendary. Haley's throat burned. Enough, she snapped, then caught herself and forced another brittle laugh. You guys are wild. Okay, I'll end here before my phone overheats. See you soon, from the real kitchen. She jabbed the screen, ending the stream. The silence afterward was louder than the fan. Moments later, Jake came through the front door, his tie loosened, expression drawn. You locked out again? He asked gently. She turned to him, trembling with fury. You gave her the code, didn't you? He hesitated, then looked toward Elle's closed bedroom door. She asked me to program access for family. Just me and Elle. Haley's breath hitched. Not me? She said you're not on the lease, he said quietly. For a heartbeat, everything stilled. Then Haley's face hardened into something brittle and dangerous. You're siding with her, she said. Jake's voice broke on the answer. No, I'm trying not to lose both of you. Haley stared at the closed kitchen door, that perfect, pristine lock pulsing red in the dark, and whispered, almost to herself, "We'll see who gets the last code." The email came at 6:12 a.m., right before sunrise, the time when the desert air still felt merciful. Haley saw the notification flash across her phone, bleary-eyed, half asleep beside Jake. She opened it out of habit, expecting a campaign confirmation or maybe an edit note on her latest reel. Instead, the subject line hit like a slap. Termination of partnership agreement. Copper and Clay Cookware. She sat up. The text was short, corporate, and merciless. Dear Ms. Quinn, due to recent events affecting your brand reputation, we are discontinuing your ambassador partnership, effective immediately. We wish you continued success in your future endeavors. No explanation, no second chance, just gone. Haley stared at the screen until the letters blurred. No, she whispered. No, no, no. Jake stirred beside her. What is it? She didn't answer. She was already scrolling through her inbox. 2 more notices, one from a food expo, and another from a cookware subscription service. Both regretted to inform her of a change in direction. By the time she reached her PR rep, her voice was raw. They can't just pull contracts like this. On the other end, Amanda's tone was steady. Careful. The way people speak when they know bad news is just getting started. Haley, it's not just one brand. It's the optics, the live stream, the kitchen lock. It's everywhere. Screenshots, TikToks, commentary channels. You've gone viral for the wrong reasons. Haley pressed her palm against her forehead. It was a misunderstanding. I didn't lose the kitchen. My mother-in-law is just... Haley. Amanda cut her off, voice gentler now. You need to fix this, publicly. Make peace with her. Lean into the narrative. A humble, family-centered rebrand could save your platform. Haley laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. You want me to apologize? To the woman who had my kitchen locked? Amanda didn't waver. Reconcile with the grandma chef, or you're done. The call ended with a click that felt like a verdict. Down the hall, the smell of something warm and sweet drifted through the open windows. Butter, cinnamon, peaches. Haley froze. She stepped into the backyard, still in her robe, the morning sun blinding off the pool. Out on the patio, Martha had set up a small table. Elle sat with 2 neighborhood kids, laughing between bites of peach cobbler. Martha poured them lemonade like it was the most natural thing in the world. The cobbler's crust glistened gold, steam curling through the desert air. The sound of metal spoons against ceramic bowls carried faintly across the yard. Morning, Martha called, her tone easy, pleasant, as if nothing between them had ever fractured. You're welcome to join us. There's plenty. Haley's jaw clenched. I'm fine. Martha smiled. Suit yourself. She slid another bowl toward Elle, who grinned, cheeks smudged with sugar. From the fence line, Dana waved as she walked her dog. Smells amazing, Martha. You should cater the HOA picnic this year. Haley felt her stomach twist. She turned, stormed back inside, and slammed the sliding door hard enough to rattle the glass. Jake was in the living room, coffee in hand, watching the morning news on mute. He glanced up. You okay? She tossed her phone onto the couch. Copper and Clay dropped me. So did Pure Chef and Tastemaker. I'm losing everything because your mother can't handle boundaries. He exhaled slowly. Haley, maybe this isn't about boundaries. Maybe it's about... About what? She snapped. He hesitated, searching for neutral ground. About how this looks. Maybe if you apologized? Haley's laugh came out too loud, brittle at the edges. Apologize? For what? Not liking mashed potatoes? For not worshiping her heritage cooking? Haley. She's manipulating you, Jake. She's been doing this since the day we moved in. She acts like she's some saint with a skillet, but she's calculating every move. He rubbed his eyes. Maybe she's not the only one calculating. Haley froze. What's that supposed to mean? But Jake didn't answer. He just set down his mug and walked past her toward the garage, where Martha's laughter still faintly carried through the cracked window. Haley stared after him, pulse pounding, then turned toward her workspace. Her laptop still sat open on the dining table, the influencer dashboard glowing with red alerts. Engagement drop warnings, follower losses, flagged comments. She slammed it shut so hard the screen flickered black. From outside came the soft sound of Elle's laughter again. Light, easy, full. Haley pressed both palms against the cool marble counter that used to be hers and whispered through gritted teeth, "Enjoy it while you can, Martha." Because under the humiliation, the fury was sharpening into resolve. Martha never expected the email to lead anywhere. It came from a local producer she'd met years ago at a catering event, back when she was still hauling food trucks to summer festivals and cooking over open flame under string lights. The subject line read, "Feature request, heirloom Southwest segment." At first, she thought it was spam. Then she saw the sender's name, Dean Lauder, director of the Phoenix Public Network's new docuseries Heritage, on the table. She read it twice, then once more for good measure. They wanted to film in her kitchen, not Haley's rented aesthetic, to showcase authentic Southwestern culinary heritage. The kind of food people had forgotten how to make because they were too busy photographing foam and drizzle. Pat was the first person Martha called. "Don't do it unless you keep control of your story," Pat warned through the phone. "No contracts where they can spin it into some reality show nonsense. If they want your food, they get it your way." "That's the only way I know," Martha said. By the following week, Dean and his small crew were standing in her kitchen, cameras humming, lights glinting off the copper pans that hung like trophies above her island. Jake hovered awkwardly near the door, equal parts proud and nervous. Elle sat on a stool by the counter, legs swinging, her hands clasped in her lap. She wore an apron that nearly swallowed her whole, embroidered with Quinn's Kitchen in faded thread. "Okay," Dean said, adjusting his mic. "Just start where you're comfortable, Ms. Quinn. Tell us what cooking means to you." Martha glanced at the camera, then back to the cast-iron skillet warming on the stove. The butter sizzled low and steady. "Cooking's a memory," she said. "It's what you feed people when words don't fix what's broken. I used to think success meant a restaurant full of strangers. Now I know better. It's one good meal that reminds somebody they matter." Dean nodded, already smiling behind the monitor. "Perfect. Keep going." Martha began slicing prickly pear pads with the ease of someone who'd done it 1,000 times. "You gotta trim around the spines careful," she said, her voice warm, unhurried. "People think cactus is rough, but once you strip it down, it's tender. Same with folks." Ella leaned closer. "That's your pickled cactus, right? The one you said Grandpa used to love?" Martha grinned. "The very one. You remembered." The camera zoomed in on her hands. The knife, the cactus, the rhythm. There was no script, no sparkle filters, no curated playlist humming underneath. Just the steady sound of oil crackling and a grandmother's voice carrying across the room. Later, they filmed the pecan butter pie. Ella helped press the dough, giggling when flour dusted her nose. Dean whispered to his assistant, "She's a natural. This feels real." Across the yard, the sound carried through the open window into the main house. Haley sat at the dining table, frozen mid-scroll as the faint laughter and clinking pans reached her. The sightlines from her office gave her a perfect view of the film crew's lights reflecting off the casita windows. She could see Elle darting around in her little apron. Her stomach twisted. On social media, her follower count was still bleeding out, a slow public death she couldn't stop. Every attempt at rebranding fell flat. When she posted a video titled "Learning from Mistakes, Let's Talk Kitchen Drama," the comments were merciless. "Too late for that, girl. We already switched to Grandma Quinn's recipes. Martha, Haley, it's not even close." Now, through the glass, she could see exactly why. Inside the casita, Martha's voice drifted clear as day. "Don't rush your crust. The good things in life take time, and a steady hand." Dean laughed softly. "You're real," he said, adjusting the focus. "She's trying too hard." Haley didn't need to ask who she was. The words hit harder than any viral comment ever had. She shut the curtains. Too late. The sound of Elle's laughter still filtered through, paired with Martha's calm, grounded rhythm, the music of something genuine. Haley stood alone in the darkened dining room, her reflection glaring back from the window, her pulse hammered. In the silence, she whispered to herself, almost like a vow, "You want a show, Martha? I'll give you one." The HOA clubhouse smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and entitlement. Ceiling fans churned the heavy afternoon air as neighbors filtered into the vinyl chairs, clutching bottled water and curiosity. Word had spread fast. "The kitchen feud hearing," someone whispered. And even the retirees who never attended meetings had shown up, eager for spectacle. Martha sat near the front with Pat, their papers stacked neatly on the table. She wore her denim jacket, the one embroidered with Quinn's Catering on the breast pocket. Her calm wasn't an act. She'd built her entire life on preparation. Across from her, Haley sat stiff-backed in a cream pantsuit that tried too hard. Her lawyer, a young man with a sharp haircut and sharper ego, shuffled his briefcase open like he was about to take down a corporation, not a 70-year-old woman with reading glasses. Dana Holt, HOA president and unofficial ringmaster, called the meeting to order. "We're here to address an appeal submitted by Haley Quinn regarding access restrictions to the kitchen at 1120 Red Willow Drive." Her tone was neutral, though the flicker of a smirk betrayed her allegiance. Haley leaned toward the microphone. "This entire situation is absurd," she began, her voice just shy of a tremble. "My husband and I live in that home. The kitchen is part of our marital property, and this—" She gestured toward Martha. "This stunt is harassment." Murmurs rippled through the room. Pat's pen clicked once. The lawyer stood, buttoning his jacket. "Under Arizona community property law, Mrs. Quinn is entitled to joint use of all common spaces within the marital home. Locking her out of the kitchen is a violation of those rights." Pat didn't look impressed. She slid a folder across the table toward Dana. "We anticipated that argument," she said. "If you'll turn to page 6. Dana flipped it open. "This is the LLC operating agreement?" "Correct." Pat's voice carried easily. "The kitchen expansion was constructed under Quinn Heritage Kitchens LLC, which remains an active business entity owned solely by Martha Quinn. The kitchen and all fixed installations are therefore leased to the occupants, not owned by them." Haley blinked. "That's ridiculous. Who even does that?" "I do," Martha said, her voice even. "When I'm footing the bill." A few of the neighbors hid smiles behind their hands. The lawyer cleared his throat. "Even if that's true, the area functions as a communal space. My client is being denied access to basic household facilities." Pat didn't flinch. "She has access to running water, electricity, and appliances elsewhere in the house. This is not about deprivation. It's about contractual usage rights." The clause was properly amended and filed with the county clerk. Mrs. Quinn signed those acknowledgments at purchase, though it appears she never read them. Haley's face flushed a deep pink. "You're twisting paperwork to humiliate me." Martha finally looked at her, eyes cool but not cruel. "You did that yourself when you mocked what built this house." Dana held up a hand. "Let's keep this civil." She turned to Haley's lawyer. "Do you have anything else?" He shuffled his papers, searching for leverage that wasn't there. We assert this was done in bad faith. Pat cut in smoothly. Bad faith requires deceit. Every line of this was transparent, filed, and notarized. My client didn't trick anyone. She simply stopped giving away what she owns for free. The silence that followed stretched. Outside, a lawnmower droned faintly, its distant whir underscoring the tension. Dana looked from one table to the other, her decision already written across her face. The HOA board has reviewed the documentation. The LLC ownership stands. The security installation complies with policy. She paused, then turned to Haley. You're outvoted. Appeal denied. A murmur rippled through the room, some sympathetic, most satisfied. Haley sat frozen, her jaw trembling, her lawyer deflating beside her. The color drained from her face. You can't just... But Dana was already signing the minutes. Meeting adjourned. Chairs scraped the floor as neighbors began to file out, whispering behind their hands. Haley stayed seated, eyes glassy and unfocused. Martha gathered her papers one by one, methodical as always. She didn't look at Haley again, not out of cruelty, but finality. Some battles didn't need a victory lap. Pat leaned in. You sure you're ready for the fallout? Martha slid the folder into her bag. I've cooked through worse heat. They walked toward the door together, sunlight pouring through the glass. Behind them, Haley's voice cracked, a whisper not meant to carry. She took everything. Outside, the desert wind picked up, scattering a few loose pages from the lawyer's briefcase. They tumbled across the parking lot like white flags no one bothered to chase. Martha didn't turn back. Not once. By the following week, the internet had crowned Haley Quinn the queen of culinary tragedy. Her kitchen lockout GoFundMe went live on a Thursday morning, complete with a crying thumbnail and a caption that read, "Help me rebuild my dream after being legally shut out of my own kitchen." Within hours, the donations poured in. Sympathy was easy to buy when the villain of your story was a grandmother with legal leverage. Haley refreshed the page every few minutes, watching the total tick higher. Button 200, 4,300. $6,000 by noon. The comments were filled with encouragement. You deserve better, girl. Mothers-in-law can be so toxic. We got you. She posted a tearful update video in her car, explaining that she was standing up for every woman whose creativity was silenced by control. Her mascara smudged perfectly for the camera. The algorithm loved it. But by nightfall, the comments started to shift. Someone on Reddit had dug up the old live stream, the brunch where she'd called Martha's meal peasant food. The clip resurfaced on TikTok with captions in bold white font. This the same woman crying over a kitchen she didn't even build. You bullied the woman feeding your kid. Peasant food tastes better than influencer lies. By morning, her GoFundMe page was a war zone. Donations slowed, then reversed as refund requests rolled in. She doesn't need money, she needs humility. Imagine mocking your own mother-in-law's cooking and then crying about it. Grandma Quinn forever. Haley stared at the screen, heart hammering, the donations counter sinking like a thermometer in the cold. Her PR rep stopped answering calls. Her lawyer texted one line before ghosting entirely. Advise you deactivate all public accounts for 30 days. Instead, she doubled down. She went live again. This narrative has been twisted, she said, voice shaking. I'm being cyberbullied for telling my truth. People think my mother-in-law's some saint, but you don't know what she's done. The comments flooded faster than she could scroll. We saw what you did. Stop weaponizing tears. This is embarrassing, Haley. Then came the post that changed everything. A well-known food blogger, Mesa Eats, with nearly 2 million followers, uploaded a carousel of photos from the HOA's autumn dinner. Martha stood behind a long table under string lights, smiling beside a roast turkey glistening in cornbread stuffing. Platters of collard greens, honey-roasted squash, and pecan tartlets lined the buffet. The caption read, "Forget influencers, give me flavor." Martha Quinn cooked a meal that felt like home. No filters, no sponsorships, just heart. The post exploded. Local outlets picked it up. Grandma Chef outsmarts influencer DIL trended on Twitter by noon. By the time Jake got home that evening, Martha's name was all over his feed. Even Bon Appetit Southwest had reposted the photo. He scrolled in silence while Haley paced the kitchen's perimeter. Or what used to be hers. "Say something," she hissed. Jake looked up, his phone still in his hand. "You should see this," he said quietly. He turned the screen toward her. There she was, Martha, laughing in the photo. One arm draped around Dana Holt, the other holding a carving knife mid-slice. Elle was in the background, grinning, holding a plate almost too big for her hands. Haley's throat closed. "They're using our house like a movie set." Jake didn't argue. He just stared at the screen a moment longer, thumb hesitating over the tag that read, "Ka Haley Quinn Eats." Slowly, almost regretfully, he tapped remove tag. She saw it. "Did you just untag me?" He set the phone down. "You said this was about your brand. Maybe it's time you stopped treating it like one." Her voice cracked. "So now you're Team Martha too?" He didn't answer. Through the window, the neighborhood lights glowed. Laughter drifted faintly from the clubhouse across the street. The HOA dinner still in full swing. Haley could hear the clatter of plates, the rise and fall of voices, the muffled sound of applause, and then, unmistakably, Martha's laugh. Warm, confident, full of ease. Haley crossed to the window and pulled the curtain aside just enough to see. The camera crew from Heritage on the table was there, capturing it all. Dean interviewing guests, his cameraman sweeping across the rows of smiling faces. Martha stood at the center, radiant in her element, her hands moving with effortless authority as she carved the turkey. Ella waved at the camera, giggling as the crowd cheered for her grandma's pie. Haley's fingers dug into the curtain fabric until her knuckles went white. Her phone buzzed on the counter. One new comment notification from her last video. She picked it up without thinking. It read, "Maybe your kitchen just found the right cook." Haley's breath hitched. She turned off the screen and stared at her reflection in the dark window. Her own outline blending with Martha's laughter outside. Something cold flickered behind her eyes. Not sorrow, not shame. Something steadier. "Fine," she whispered. "Let her have her crowd." She let the curtain fall closed. "I'll build my own." The letter came tucked inside Ella's homework folder. A note from her third-grade teacher written in cheerful blue ink. "Ms. Quinn, I thought you'd like to see this before parent night. Ella's essay touched everyone in class today. You should be very proud." Martha found it that evening, folded neatly beside a hand-drawn picture of a pie. The paper smelled faintly of crayons and pencil shavings, the way childhood should. She sat on her porch under the soft hum of the desert night, glasses perched on her nose, and began to read. The title was printed in careful block letters, "The Kitchen That Feeds Everybody." Martha's throat tightened. My grandma's food makes everyone feel like they belong. She doesn't use fancy words or foam or plates that look like art. She says food is for people, not for pictures. When she cooks, the whole house smells like love. Even people who fight stop fighting when they eat her peach cobbler. It's like her food tells them it's okay to come home again. By the time Martha reached the bottom of the page, her eyes had blurred so badly she had to blink twice to steady the words. She pressed the paper to her chest and exhaled slowly. "Lord," she whispered, "that girl sees everything." Across the yard, lights still burned in the main house. She could see Haley pacing through the dining room, phone in hand, face aglow with the pale blue light of her screen. The woman never seemed to stop searching for validation, as if applause might fix what empathy couldn't. Martha folded the essay carefully and tucked it back into the folder. Tomorrow, she'd frame it. But morning had other plans. When she went to drop the folder in Ella's backpack before school, it was gone. She checked the counter, the porch, her kitchen table. Nothing. Then she saw it, in the trash bin by the back steps, torn clean in two. Haley stood nearby, arms crossed, cup of matcha in hand. "Oh, that?" she said, as if noticing it for the first time. "It was messy. You know how kids are." She probably meant to rewrite it. Martha looked at the shredded paper, the jagged edges like a wound. "She meant every word," she said quietly. Haley's smile was tight. "Maybe. But you're making this whole kitchen thing bigger than it needs to be. Ella's just a child. She doesn't need to pick sides." Martha's eyes didn't leave hers. "You tore her words, Haley, not her sides." For a second, something flickered in Haley's expression. Shame, or maybe recognition, before she masked it again. "You're turning her against me." "She's watching," Martha said softly. "That's all she's doing. Watching who feeds love and who feeds ego." Haley opened her mouth to answer, but Jake's voice broke in from the doorway. "What's going on?" Neither woman turned. Martha simply gestured toward the trash. "You might want to ask your wife." Jake crouched to pick up the torn paper, the pieces fluttering in his hand like broken wings. He read just enough to understand before looking up. "Haley," he said, quiet but firm. "Why would you do this?" Her chin lifted defensively. "Because she's making me the villain in front of my own daughter." Jake stared at the torn essay, then back at her. The silence between them heavy, dangerous. But he said nothing, not one word. He just set the pieces on the counter and walked out the back door, leaving Haley alone with her reflection in the window. Later that afternoon, Pat dropped by with a file and a jar of marmalade. She found Martha sitting at her patio table, glue stick in hand, piecing the essay back together. Pat smiled gently. "You really are something else." "Just fixing what matters," Martha murmured, pressing the last strip into place. Pat poured them both coffee, her gaze soft. "That kitchen didn't feed her pride," she said. "It fed a home. That's what burns her." Martha nodded. "And what saves the rest of us?" When the school bell rang later that day, Elle came running across the playground, backpack bouncing. She spotted Martha waiting by the gate and threw herself into her arms. "Grandma, did you see my essay? Ms. Delaney said she sent it home." Martha hugged her tight. "I did, baby, and it's perfect. Every word." Elle looked up, beaming. "You think so?" "I know so," Martha said, her voice steady. Behind them, Haley's SUV idled at the curb, her hand gripping the wheel, eyes dark with something unreadable. Martha didn't look back. She took Elle's hand and started walking, the desert sun catching the taped-together paper sticking out of her bag, mended, visible, and stronger than before. The garage smelled like motor oil and desperation. Haley stood in front of the camera, forcing a bright smile as her ring light flickered against the concrete wall. The heat pressed down heavy, the kind of dry Arizona air that made sweat bead at her hairline despite the fan she'd set up off-frame. "Hey, loves," she said to the lens, voice dripping with performative cheer. "Welcome back to my new space, my rustic barn kitchen. I wanted something with real character, something authentic, something that says from scratch." Behind her, the truth refused to cooperate. The barn kitchen was nothing more than a cramped corner of the garage, dressed up with props. A wooden cutting board balanced on an overturned crate. A burlap runner hid the stain from an oil leak. She'd dragged one of Jake's old shop lights over for mood lighting, but it threw uneven shadows across her face, carving the air with every blink. Her phone, propped on a tripod, wobbled slightly as she stirred an empty mixing bowl. "We're making a sweet corn soufflé today," she said brightly, even though the bowl held nothing but air. In the background, a box labeled Christmas Lights, 2018 sat half open, a tangle of cords spilling out. A red gas can glared from the corner like an accusation. She was 20 seconds into her next take when Elle appeared in the doorway. "Mom?" Haley jumped, nearly dropping her whisk. "Sweetie, I'm filming." Elle frowned. "Why are you in the garage?" Haley forced another laugh. "It's not the garage, honey, it's my studio kitchen. Like Grandma's, but different." Elle looked around. "It doesn't look like a kitchen." "Of course it does," Haley snapped, a little too sharp. "You just have to use your imagination." "But—" Ella tilted her head, eyes searching the corners. "Why are you pretending? Mom?" The words hit harder than any online comment ever had. For a second, the air felt thinner, the heat heavier. Haley's jaw tensed. "I'm not pretendin'," she said, voice low. "I'm workin'." But Elle just stared at her, quiet, serious, before turning and walking out, the door creaking behind her. Haley stood frozen, the camera still rolling, her reflection staring back from the darkened lens. When she finally uploaded the clip that night, she told herself no one would notice. They always believed the illusion before. She added filters, softened the lighting, added a twangy country jingle underneath. "Farmhouse chic," she called it in the caption. The first few comments were kind enough. "Love the rustic vibe. So cozy." But by the end of the hour, the internet had done what it always does, noticed everything. "Wait, is that a gas can in the back? That's not a barn, it's a garage. Where's the corn? Even the whisk is fake." Screenshots spread faster than she could delete them. Meme pages posted side-by-side comparisons. Martha's sunlit kitchen versus Haley's cluttered garage corner. One's a home, the other's a performance. Within a day, her sponsors started dropping like flies. First a cookware company, then her meal kit partner. Finally, a wellness brand she'd modeled for called. The rep's voice was polite but merciless. "Your engagement has shifted, Haley. The audience doesn't trust you anymore." She didn't even argue this time. She just hung up. That night, she sat in the dark garage long after the ring light died, scrolling through the comments that gutted what little remained of her career. "Grandma's kitchen looks better. More real. Authenticity isn't a filter, babe. You should take cooking lessons from Martha." Her thumb hovered over each one until the words blurred. Across the driveway, the light in Martha's casita glowed steady and warm. Inside, laughter drifted through the window, the easy, rhythmic kind that came from people who had nothing to prove. Ella's voice rose above it, happy and unguarded. Haley turned back to her own set, to the peeling poster board backdrop she'd painted beige to fake shiplap. It leaned crooked now, a prop collapsing under its own lie. Her phone buzzed again. Account notice. Brand termination confirmed. The last one. Haley stared at the notification until the screen dimmed, her reflection staring back, flat, colorless, unfiltered. For the first time, she didn't reach to fix the lighting. "Enjoy it, Martha," she whispered, voice barely a breath. "Enjoy your truth, while it lasts." Her hand hovered over the record button again, but this time, she didn't press it. She sat in the silence instead, the hum of the refrigerator seeping through the walls like a slow, taunting pulse. Somewhere in that stillness, the lie stopped being a performance. It started becoming a plan. The email came just after sunrise, when the desert sky still held streaks of lavender and gold. Martha was halfway through whisking pancake batter when she heard the soft ping from her phone. She wiped her hands on her apron, expecting a note from Pat or maybe a recipe inquiry from the docuseries producer. Instead, she saw the subject line, "Invitation, Desert Bloom Culinary Retreat, Seasonal instructor opportunity. Her eyebrows lifted. She read on. The retreat's founder, Caroline Mays, wrote with enthusiasm that nearly jumped off the screen. She remembered Martha from years ago, a catering event at her vineyard in Sedona. Martha had made pecan-crusted trout and mesquite rolls that people still talked about. "We're expanding our seasonal workshops for young chefs," Caroline wrote. "Hands-on, heritage-based classes. Would you consider teaching a few sessions this fall? Room, board, and an honorarium included." Martha smiled to herself. "Well," she murmured, "life's got a funny way of circling back." Ella's footsteps pattered down the hallway. "Grandma, what are you smiling at?" Martha turned the phone toward her. "Looks like someone wants me to teach folks how to cook." Elle's eyes went wide. "Like a cooking school?" "More like a retreat," Martha said. "Out by the Red Cliffs. A bunch of folks who love food and want to learn." "Can I help?" Elle asked instantly, grinning. "I can stir. I can mix. I can even taste test if you need it." Martha chuckled, smoothing a hand over the girl's hair. "You already do all that, sweetheart, but sure, maybe someday." From the doorway, Jake's voice drifted in. "That sounds incredible, Mom." He leaned against the frame, coffee mug in hand, looking more at ease than she'd seen him in months. "When do you go?" "End of the week, if I say yes," she said. "It's just a few days up north." Jake smiled faintly. "You should take it. You've earned something that's just yours again." Martha nodded, though her eyes flicked toward the window where the main house loomed. Inside, Haley's silhouette passed through the dining room, a phone pressed to her ear. She was pacing again. Words muffled but sharp. The tone of someone fighting battles that didn't exist yet. Later that afternoon, as Martha packed her things, Elle helped line the trunk of the old SUV with blankets. The girl had written a checklist in purple marker: cast iron pan, apron, recipe cards, honey butter jar. She checked each one off with theatrical seriousness. "Got everything?" Jake asked, walking up with her duffel bag. "Almost," Martha said, scanning the counter. She reached for her cast iron skillet, the same one that had started all of this, and held it for a moment, feeling the weight. Years of seasoning, years of meals, years of quiet power. Jake noticed the look. "You still cook with that old thing?" "Always," Martha said. "You keep what works." He nodded, setting her duffel in the trunk. "I'll drive you up." "You can't be hauling all this alone." She smiled softly. "You just want an excuse for my cornbread halfway there." He laughed, and for a brief moment the air between them felt light again, like the way it used to be before ambition turned their house into a battlefield. As the sun began to dip low, Haley appeared at the window upstairs, half hidden by the blinds. Her face was unreadable. Not anger, not sorrow, just something still and dark, as though she were watching a scene she didn't belong to anymore. Elle ran back to the porch. "Grandma, don't forget your pie server." "Got it," Martha said, tucking it carefully beside her cast iron. Haley's gaze followed the motion. That pan, the symbol of everything she'd lost. Her fingers tightened around the curtain, nails pressing half moons into the fabric. Outside, the cicadas had started their evening chorus. The driveway shimmered in the fading light as Martha climbed into the passenger seat. Jake started the car, gravel crunching beneath the tires. Elle waved from the curb, her little hand raised high until the SUV turned the corner and disappeared. From the window, Haley's reflection stared back at her, pale, motionless. The car's taillights flared once, fading into the twilight. She whispered to no one, "Take your little victory lap, Martha. We're not done." Down the road, Martha rested her palm over the skillet in the back seat. It vibrated gently with the hum of the road, solid, dependable, hers. She smiled to herself, unaware of the storm still brewing behind her. The papers waited on Pat's mahogany desk like a quiet secret about to change everything. Late afternoon light spilled through the blinds, striping the pages in gold and shadow. The legal language was tidy, precise, and merciless, just as Martha liked it. Pat stood at the window, sipping coffee that had long gone cold. "Once you sign this, there's no going back," she said. "It'll be airtight. The kitchen, the equipment, the rights, all transferred into Ella's trust. You'll retain guardianship until she's 18. Martha nodded, eyes steady. "That kitchen's fed generations, Pat. But she's the only one who never tried to brand it." Pat smiled faintly. "Then she's the right one." The door opened quietly behind them. Jake and Elle stepped in, the faint sound of gravel still clinging to their shoes from the driveway. Haley followed a few paces behind, arms crossed tight. Lips painted a little too dark. Armor for a battle she was about to lose. "What's all this?" she asked, her voice too calm. "Another paperwork stunt?" Martha didn't rise to it. She gestured toward the empty chair across from her. "Sit, Haley. Might do you good to listen for once." Haley laughed, brittle and humorless. "I'm fine standing." Pat opened the folder and laid out the documents. "This," she said, "is a formal amendment to the LLC's ownership structure. It places the kitchen and all associated assets into a private trust with Elle Quinn as beneficiary." Haley blinked. "You're joking." "No," Pat replied. "It's quite serious." Jake looked between them, his expression clouded. "Mom, are you sure about this? Elle's only 8. Martha gave him a small smile. "And already has better taste than most adults I know." Ella's eyes widened. "Does that mean it's mine?" "In trust," Pat clarified gently. "You'll help take care of it. For now, your grandma and I will make sure it's protected until you're older." Haley's voice cut in sharp as glass. "You can't just give away property like that. Jake and I own the house." Pat didn't even blink. "The kitchen is separate. Always has been. You never read the clauses." Again. Haley's color rose. "You can't just decide my daughter owns something in my house." Martha turned toward her, calm as the desert before a storm. "It's not yours to lose, Haley, and it's not my house anymore either. It's Elle's kitchen. She's the only one who's ever treated it with respect." Jake swallowed hard, emotion tightening his jaw. "Mom, it's time," Martha said softly. "I built it to feed family, not ego. You told me once, Jake, that Elle brings peace to this house. Maybe that's what this place needs most. Peace with her name on it." Haley's nails scraped across the edge of the table. "You're doing this to humiliate me." Martha met her gaze. "No, I'm doing it to make sure you never touch what you don't value." The room went still. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. Pat slid the final page toward Ella. "All you need to do is sign your name here, sweetheart." Ella looked up at her grandmother for permission. Martha nodded, pride softening every line of her face. "Go on, baby. Write it big." The pen looked enormous in Ella's small hand. She wrote slowly, each letter deliberate, a declaration. ELLEQUINN. Jake's eyes glistened. "That's my girl," he whispered, his voice breaking on the last word. Haley stood rigid, her breath coming too fast. "You're making a child part of your sick vendetta." Martha rose from her chair. "No, I'm giving her what you never understood. Roots." Haley's chair screeched back against the tile. "You can keep your roots," she snapped. "I'm done playing this game." She grabbed her purse and stormed toward the door. "When the lawyers see this, you'll wish you'd never signed it." Pat's voice followed her out, cool and steady. "You'll find there's nothing to contest. One clause," she said, closing the folder with a soft click. That's all it took. The door slammed. In the silence that followed, Ella looked up at her grandmother. "Did I do something bad?" Martha knelt beside her, brushing a wisp of hair from her face. You did something right. You made sure the kitchen stays with the people who love it, not the ones who want to own it. Pat gathered the papers, tucking them neatly into her briefcase. Well, that's that. She smiled at Ella. First signature of many, kiddo. Outside, the late sun flared orange against the glass, catching the faint reflection of Haley's car speeding away, a streak of fury in the fading light. Jake exhaled, rubbing his temples. You just drew a line she'll never forgive, Mom. Martha stood, her voice low but certain. Good. Now she knows where it is. The house smelled alive again. It began at sunrise, with yeast and laughter. Local teens from the co-op culinary program trickled into Martha's kitchen, hair tied back, sleeves rolled, the nervous energy of first-timers hovering like static. She greeted each one with a smile and a clean apron. Knives are sharp, she said, tapping her favorite chef's blade against the counter. Mine's sharper. Let's keep both that way. They laughed, loosening up as the first onions hit the pan. Garlic followed, the scent curling through the open windows and spilling into the warm Arizona air. Ella stood at the far counter, wooden spoon in hand, leading the dessert team like a tiny general. Grandma says you don't rush cobbler, she instructed. It knows when it's ready. A boy about her age grinned. So, we just wait till it tells us? Exactly, Ella said, hands on hips. Listen close. The room burst into soft laughter. Even Martha joined in. By late afternoon, the kitchen had turned into a rhythm. One of sizzling butter, murmured conversation, and the soft scrape of spoons against ceramic. The counters were dusted with flour, sunlight catching on the swirling motes. Every few minutes someone would call out, "Taste this," and pass a spoon like communion. Dana Holt arrived an hour before dinner carrying a box filled with handmade candles. Fig and sage, she said proudly, made them special for tonight. Martha took one, inhaling. Smells like home. Dana winked. That's the idea. She looked around at the crowded kitchen. You really turned this place into a heartbeat again, Martha. Martha smiled, modest as ever. It was never dead. Just needed the right hands stirring it. When the sun began to set, long streaks of orange fell across the tiled floor, and the house started to hum. Music low, chatter rising, plates clinking softly. The dining table, once a stage for tension, now glowed under Dana's candles. The teens had outdone themselves, roasted vegetables drizzled with local honey, cornbread gleaming with melted butter, pecan salad dressed in citrus vinaigrette, and the cobbler, bubbling, golden, unapologetically perfect. Ella stood beside it proudly, cheeks flushed. Grandma, we did it. You sure did, Martha said, kissing her hair. This kitchen belongs to you now. Don't forget that. Guests gathered around, neighbors and friends, filling every chair and spilling into the hallway. Even a few HOA members showed up, curiosity softened into gratitude. Jake raised his glass. Nothing fancy, just sweet tea in mason jars. To real food, he said, voice carrying just enough to silence the room. He glanced at his mother, eyes full. And real family. The words hung in the air, steady and deliberate, glasses lifted. To real food and real family. They drank. Laughter followed. Someone started a story about the first time they'd tried to bake without measuring. Someone else passed rolls. Dana's candles flickered, scenting the air with warmth and fig. And for the first time in years, the Quinn kitchen sounded like it was supposed to. Full. Martha looked around the room, taking it all in. Jake laughing with one of the teens, Dana topping off glasses, Elle passing out dessert plates, her little voice bubbling over with excitement. The kitchen hummed with life, the kind that couldn't be streamed, filtered, or monetized. No one mentioned Haley. No one needed to. Her absence hung like a closed door, acknowledged, but irrelevant. When the last plate was cleared and the teens began packing up leftovers, Martha stepped out onto the patio. The desert night was cool, cicadas starting their chorus again. She looked through the window, where the candlelight flickered across faces she loved. Pat arrived late, leaning against the doorway with a knowing smile. Not bad for your first official dinner as the Quinn Trust's executive chef. Martha chuckled. Don't you start giving me titles. Pat handed her a folded napkin. You earned them. All of them. Martha opened it. Inside was the embossed seal of heritage on the table, the docuseries that had first filmed her. They'd sent a thank you note for reviving the spirit of American cooking. Martha traced the words with her thumb. Funny how peace can taste like cornbread, she murmured. Pat smiled. Or maybe it's just what peace smells like when it finally finds you. From somewhere inside, Elle's voice rang out. Grandma, come taste the cobbler before it gets cold. Martha turned, her face lit with a soft pride that came from survival, not victory. Be right there, baby. She took one last glance at the horizon, the desert stretching wide and endless, stars beginning to prick through the fading blue, and whispered to the night, It's full again. Then she went inside. Behind her, the candles flickered in the kitchen window, their flames steady and unafraid. The light of a home that had finally, completely, chosen its keeper. The call came 2 days after the dinner, short, sharp, and expected. Martha, Pat said, her voice calm as ever. You'd better come by my office. She's trying to list the property. Martha didn't flinch. Of course she is. By the time she arrived, the paperwork was already on Pat's desk, a glossy brochure mock-up from a local realtor. Modern desert living with luxury kitchen and media-ready interiors. Pat tapped a red manicured nail on the image. She submitted this through an agent friend, tried to bypass the LLC's ownership clause by listing it under Jake's name, but she doesn't realize she can't. Martha finished for her. The kitchen and all its fixtures are held in trust. She has no authority to list or sell anything tied to it. Pat smiled. Exactly. And since the kitchen is the home's main value asset, no broker will touch it once they see this. She slid over a folder thick with filings. I made sure every box is checked, every boundary drawn. Martha took the pen and signed where Pat pointed, sealing the reaffirmation. The motion was slow, deliberate. The same way she kneaded dough. Press, turn, finish. Lock it down tight, she said. Pat nodded. Consider it done. She has no legal rights to list, sell, lease, or even market that house. Not without your written consent. Martha exhaled, quiet but satisfied. Then let her try. That evening, the sun was a dull copper coin sinking over the desert ridge when Haley's last attempt fizzled. The realtor, a polished woman in a beige blazer, stood awkwardly at the gate, phone pressed to her ear. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Quinn, she said. Our firm just received notice of restricted title. The LLC ownership complicates, well, frankly, invalidates, the listing. Haley's voice cracked with disbelief. Invalidates? You're saying I can't even sell my own home? The agent gave a sympathetic shrug. Technically, it's not yours to sell. From the casita across the courtyard, Martha watered her herbs as the realtor's car pulled away. Haley stood frozen on the porch, phone limp in her hand, fury simmering beneath her glossy exterior. The next morning, her influencer account was gone. Not just deactivated, but erased. Every reel, every post, every partnership wiped clean, as though the internet itself had decided to forget her. By week's end, the HOA newsletter arrived in every mailbox of Red Willow Drive. The front page featured a photograph of Martha standing in her sunlit kitchen, Elle beside her holding a mixing bowl twice her size. Heritage Kitchen brings community to the table. Dana's editorial beneath the photo read, a reminder that homes are built by heart, not hashtags. Jake brought the newsletter out to the patio where Martha and Ella sat under the shade of a mesquite tree, sorting through old recipe cards. Ella's small fingers brushed across the yellowed paper, tracing names written decades before. Sweet tea brine, buttermilk cornbread, farm apple jam. Grandma, she asked suddenly, can I keep these someday? Martha smiled. You already do, sweetheart. Ella giggled. No, I mean for real. Like one day when I'm grown up. Will this all be mine? Martha looked at her, sunlight catching the silver in her hair. One day? She repeated softly, then reached over to tap the little girl's chest. Honey, it already is. The words settled between them like a promise. Jake folded the newsletter and slipped it into his pocket. She's not taking this place back, is she? Not in this lifetime, Martha said. They sat in companionable silence for a while, the faint scent of rosemary drifting from the herb pots. From inside the kitchen came the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the clink of wind chimes in the window, a rhythm that felt like peace, like permanence. Finally, Jake said, You know, Mom, you could have just yelled back at her that day. Saved yourself a year of chaos. Martha chuckled, eyes glinting. Oh, but where's the satisfaction in that? He laughed, shaking his head. You really closed her out without raising your voice once. Martha leaned back, gaze settling on the open kitchen door, sunlight pouring through it like forgiveness that didn't need to be spoken. Some doors, she said, are meant to stay closed. Elle crawled into her lap, clutching the recipe cards. Tell me again about the first thing you ever cooked here, she said sleepily. Martha smiled and began to hum, the story already forming on her lips. Across the yard, the house that once echoed with rivalry stood quiet now. No cameras, no shouting, no pretense. Only the hum of a kitchen alive again, belonging fully and forever to the people who cherished it. Martha's voice dropped to a whisper. More to herself than anyone else. My DL mocked my cooking as peasant food, so I closed her kitchen with a single clause. The cicadas sang louder, the wind stirred the candles on the sill, and the house, her house, kept its peace.